Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. So yesterday, I know you're going to be watching this later sometimes, but yesterday I finally got to talk to you about the 4090 Founders Edition. Today, the day after, the NDA for the aftermarket cards now lifts. Now I'm lucky enough to have a Gigabyte WindForce here at the moment and an MSI Suprim here at the moment, and there are full reviews for both of these cards individually over on the website, so please go over and take a look if you are interested in any more data testing, any of that sort of stuff. There's loads more on the website and I will put the links for you underneath, as I always do. But having these two cards is kind of, I need to put them together because I'm just running out of time. Actually filming this on the day of release because I've only just got the price for the MSI. The price for the MSI comes in at £2,079. Now there has been a delay with that because they are citing obviously problems with the exchange rate and the dollar conversion and everything at the moment, and it is making tech significantly more expensive because the government clearly don't know what they're doing at the present moment in time. But that's not an excuse. It's just £2,079 and me having a whinge. The Gigabyte comes in a little bit over MSRP at 1,749 of your Great British Beer tokens. Now, that obviously comes in over the price of the 1,699 that the Founders Edition released at, or is for sale for now if you manage to get one. Now, obviously, the when you compare the 4090 to older cards, it's obviously a powerhouse. But today we are going to be focusing more on the 4090 versus itself. I will mix in some of the Founders Edition graphs, but the bulk of the reviews the bulk of the results that I'm going to give you today are these three cards head to head, with the idea that possibly you are making a decision in what card you might buy. Is it going to be a Founders? Is it going to be a Gigabyte? Could it possibly be an MSI? If you're wondering about, well, where's the Asus? They just haven't sent one. It's just not here. We will leave it at that. As I have said though, if you want to go and look at the Founders Edition review, I have already done that, but I'll mix some of the graphs in with you so you can get a placeholder and then you can kind of see where you are with these. I didn't want to busy the graphs too much with 3 4090s and then like loads of 3080s and 2080s and 6700 XTs and that sort of thing. So we're trying to keep it a little bit more readable for you today. So you know the prices, you know what we're on about. The first thing I'm going to cover is getting these cards in the actual system themselves and to talk to you in great honesty about the build quality. Let's start with the NVIDIA tank. I mean, this card is built, it is just massive, but also very sturdy. This isn't the sort of thing that you would do with your card at home, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the fact that this card is in there, it does not move, it's in there like swimwear. Yeah, that's me trying to be funny. Bad, but it is built like a tank and it shows as well. It's very, very well built. Now, the majority of the aftermarket cards are what I would call open frame, and that is because you don't really have anything between the PCB and the kind of outside dressing of the heatsink. So you're reliant on the design of the heat pipes and the fins and everything to give you that rigidity, whereas the NVIDIA is completely almost enclosed in metal, and that is why it is such a tank, but also why it weighs so much. Whereas with this, it is still very sturdy. Now the MSIs, you can see I've got a little bit of flex there, but I am quite literally lifting that up to get it to do that. But there's not really any droop or anything there. I fitted it as best as I possibly can. It feels very sturdy still, there's no creaking, it doesn't feel cheap. There is a lot of metal in the shroud of the design with the MSI though, helping to kind of hold it together, and then obviously some serious heatsink going on in between. Now, onto the Gigabyte. Now I've had great difficulty getting the camera to show you this, so that screw and that screw there are the only two holding the card in. You can see that there's a missing screw underneath, and that is because the Gigabyte is only dual slot. Not that it really makes any difference to the rigidity, but I just think with the size and the fact that everybody else went with a triple slot kind of idea, I think they've missed out on a trick. Now, I do need to say that the Gigabyte, as well as the MSI actually, but the Gigabyte does come with a GPU stand. It's all adjustable. You can change the height as you wish, so you don't have to have the full bar. And then you can adjust the height to support the graphics card. The MSI does come with one as well, but as you've seen, you didn't need it. With the Gigabyte, I would personally say you do. It's a lot more bouncy on the end. You can see that there's a lot more flex, and it's, if I bring you in so you can get a better reference, it does move an awful lot. It does come with that bracket though. Now, like I said, the MSI does as well, but I didn't feel like it needed it. With the Gigabyte, I would definitely be using it, and I'd probably give it a little bit of a lift, get it nice and tight, and then it does solve your problem and make it very, very rigid. It should only really be an issue if you move your PC about a lot, to the point where if I was going to be moving my PC to a friend's house or going to a LAN or something and I had one of these cards, I'd actually probably remove it because of the weight and the fact that there is that little bit of extra spring there. We do need to remember though that this is the cheapest of the two, and if we zoom in, you can actually see where the PCB ends as well. So the end of the card is pretty much all being held up by the heatsink, and then it's then the heat pipes as well. And I know I'm very unprofessionally moving the camera, but that end of the heatsink up here is then pivoting on those heat pipes. Could they have made it stronger? I think they probably could have done. But let's move on and look at some Okie dokie then, on to temperatures. Now, which one would you think would have been the coolest? Now, we've started doing the temperatures and the power draw slightly different with the 4090s, because the way we were doing it just was not stressing them out at all. So we used to use Unigine. So we've now moved on to OCCT with their GPU benchmark kind of like stress testing mode to basically be able to punish them slightly better. Now, which one would you think would be the coolest? Because I would have put my money personally on the MSI, and I would have thought that the Gigabyte would have been the warmest, but randomly the warmest was the 4090 with a normal GPU temp of 70 degrees, and then the hotspot was above the 80 degree mark. The second place was the MSI. The MSI came in at around 68 degrees, but we were sub 80 on the hotspot after a torturing 30-minute pummel with OCCT. But in first place or third place, depending, the coolest was amazingly the Gigabyte. Now, both the MSI and the Gigabyte do have BIOS switches on the card. MSI says it has a silent mode and then a gaming mode. Gigabyte says that it has a silent mode and then a OC mode. We tested it, so this was in the gaming mode, so basically the fast one. The Gigabyte was also in the fast stroke OC mode, so we didn't go silent. If we'd gone silent, the temperatures would have been more. One of the things I will say though is neither of these cards are loud. I genuinely don't know why you would want to put them on silent, because in all due respect, if you've got a CPU that's going to keep up with these graphics cards, your cooler is going to be making more noise than these are. Even if you're water cooled with really quiet fans, they're definitely not loud. If I was to try and test the graphics card noise with this system, I'd have to turn all of the other fans off to even be able to remotely be able to test it. It's just not a result that you particularly need to do. It's they're just very cool, calm and collected. And like I said, your CPUs are going to be creating not necessarily more heat, but definitely the coolers are going to be making more noise, even if you run on a Noctua. Power draw wise, weirdly, normally when it comes to kind of power draw and then clock speeds, I would say that the power draw and the clock speeds kind of go hand in hand. Now the power draw, the MSI kind of sat itself in the middle, and then the wind force was actually sipping that little bit more power. But when you correlate that then into clock speeds, it kind of, the MSI definitely pulls in front, much faster in all regards across the board with the MSI, and then the Gigabyte comes into second place. And you can see the kind of difference between the Founders Editions there as well. So these are significantly quicker boosting, and the power wise not much between them in reality. And one of the things I do need to absolutely stress, the power draw that you can see there is for the entire system, not just the graphics card. But what we've been doing is we've been testing these for so long, or testing graphics cards on this for so long, that's why the graph is then rather big. So I'm going to show you all of the ones with the Founders Edition and all the other cards as well, just so that you can kind of get a gist of where we are going with it. Now, we do an awful lot of testing with these cards. Each one of these cards is 62, sometimes a few more, depending on 62 results, 62 individual bench runs, and they obviously don't take a minute or two each. So Control, for example, takes me to bench about an hour and a half. It's over an hour by the time you're in and out, changing all the settings, doing all of the different resolutions and all that sort of stuff. So to benchmark one of these cards takes an age. And then you've obviously got to make the video, do the editing, do the rendering, all the written work. You know, combined, the amount of time is days and days each. Not that I'm looking for sympathy, because I'm clearly very lucky to be able to work with this hardware on a day-to-day basis. But my point was, you can go to the OC3D website, see loads more tests, loads more results. You can go and pick the graphs apart. But please also do let us know what you think of the graphs. But anyway, Ultra preset on Cyberpunk. It's an absolutely nuts card, but just look at the differences there. Now, we've obviously got DLSS, we've obviously got normal ray tracing, but then obviously the frame gen on there as well. So these are just these three cards in this graph, but I can show you the other graph with all the other graphics cards as well. Now, obviously, there's an awful lot of data there. I don't want to be showing you comparisons to the 6700 XT and all of those other cards all of the time. That really is the data for the Founders Edition review. We're going to be doing just the 490s in reality. When the 4080s come out, and you know, maybe any other cards, maybe we'll slip them into these graphs as well. But it does get very busy very quick. Yes, we might separate out resolutions from now on, but we're just trying to give you as many details as possible. Now, I really like F1 2022. Not only does it make benching it really easy, because the frame generation actually shows up in the benchmark results at the end, and I don't need to use special NVIDIA tools to be able to see it, but it looks incredibly pretty, and it does still stress everything out at 4K, which, as you can see here. Watch Dogs Legion, few less results in this one. Nicer graph to look at very quickly in a video. I hope you do like the vertical graphs. It is a work in progress though. This isn't the final design. We are still tweaking. But what we wait to do is show them to you, take a bit of feedback, but then also we carry on working with them in ourselves. Blender. We do the Blender Cycles benchmark, as you can see here, and in reality there's not a great deal between the three. If we were to bring like the Blender Cycles benchmark up with all the other cards, you can clearly see that the 1490 is just an absolute powerhouse when it comes to doing content creation and stuff. But between these three cards here, not a great deal between them, or at least not between the MSI and the Gigabyte anyway. And then the DLS S-Test, just to kind of throw it in there, again, very little between the three themselves. So my overall feelings with these two cards and the three. Now the MSI, the Founders Edition is obviously built like a tank. And if you want to go and grab the Founders, then obviously you can do. I'm not going to tell you which card to kind of get. The Gigabyte is clearly kind of the value for money card, because you get the aftermarket card kind of vibe. It cools very well. It's very quiet with it. But it is the one out of the two that I would say you have to use the support with, because otherwise there is a little bit of flex, and you probably are over time going to get more sag with it. But that's why they bundle it with that support anyway. Also with that support, one of the things I would say is you're not going to void your warranty if you want to mod it. So you could go and paint it. You could go and wrap some vinyl around it. You could have a Lego man glued to the side of it, or a load of them glued to the side of it in reality. There's lots of things that you do to it, and it's not going to void the warranty on the card. Although I have to admit, I genuinely want to paint this thing white now. The MSI, definitely built more like a tank. Absolute tank in reality. I hadn't said to you that the lighting on the back of the back plate and down the side is now white, and to combine that with the gunmetal grey, it looks beautiful. But it's obviously a whole £300 more, and it's a little bit warmer than the Gigabyte, but they perform very similarly. I would say that if I'd had more time, because I really didn't like to try and get these three cards done in a week, it sounds like a lot of time, but when you've got so much to do and extra benchmarks, and Nvidia sending you new stuff that they want you to bench, and it takes a lot longer than you might think. Not that I'm looking for sympathy, but I would have liked to have spent some time overclocking the MSI, and given the chance, I will come back to this. I'm actually debating different things that I would like to do with the Suprim. Like I said, with the Gigabyte, I actually genuinely wanted to paint it, because it does, out of the three, the Gigabyte does feel and look the cheapest. Is the MSI worth another £300 though? I mean, with all due respect, that's a graphics card to an awful lot of people out there, or a processor, or a motherboard. To go from kind of £1,700 to almost £2,100 is just, it's a big step. Now I understand why, because they're going to have used higher components and better power delivery than the Gigabyte, and I completely get all of that. This might live a little bit longer, it might not, but is it £300 more? I don't know. I really don't know. This is clearly like the enthusiast end of the market, and if I was going to give it an award, it would be the enthusiast award, because we want companies to have big bonkers cards like this out there in the wild, because it does keep things exciting. It doesn't mean that every single one of us has to run out and buy them, but there always will be people that are like, I love an MSI graphics card, I'd want a little bit more than the Trio, so I'm gonna go for the Suprim, and it's a treat, and congratulations if you can afford to do that. I'm never going to tell you not to. I'm not going to be one of those naysayers, because I think there's far too much going on in the PC industry at the moment where people are being negative, and we need to get back to the fact that we should be allowed to spend what money we want to do on what we want to spend it on. Now, yes, I would very much love if this was 1000 GBP. It would probably be a lot easier to recommend if it was, but hey, at the end of the day, it's Nvidia that's decided that it's never going to be that price until they have too many of them in the channel and they're trying to get rid of them. So, too much politics. I need to digress. Gigabyte is definitely the kind of aftermarket budget kind of one, and it keeps up with the Suprim, and it is cooler. I would just have wished that they had done something a little bit more with the design itself. It's not ugly. I mean, the heat sinks and everything are amazing. it does give you an air. I just think if they'd used a slightly different colour plastic or something, just to try and give it slightly more of a premium vibe going on. But maybe they wanted it to just be cheap, because there are obviously going to be like the extremes and stuff coming later. But in reality, my sensible head says I would buy the Gigabyte. But my enthusiast, exciting person, don't care about money head, says I would buy the Gigabyte. And I think that's a kind of a nice, says that I would buy the MSI Suprim. And I think that's a really nice balanced way to go about it. If you have the money and you're lucky enough to be looking at buying a 4090, but you want to try and save some money where you can, because you're going to go and buy a better, faster CPU to try and keep up with these maybe, or you're buying an entire system and it's all going to add up in the end, then definitely go and grab the Gigabyte. It won't disappoint. At the end of the day, the frames per second are nigh on exactly the same. So that's where that lies. But the MSI does have that far more premium edge. At the end of the day, you don't buy a Ferrari to do 30 mile an hour everywhere, but we do crawl around in them. Well, people that have them do, because I definitely don't. I'm an old Ford guy. But people do still definitely buy them to just park them up and to drive them slow everywhere. So it's horses for courses. It's all down to you, and it depends whether you want budget or premium. The choice is yours. Performance is there, cooling is there, build quality kind of differs between the two. It's now time for you guys at home to decide, are they for you? On that fence so much, I've got splinters on my bum, but for now at least this is the tiniest one. Don't forget, you can like, subscribe and comment. Please let me know underneath. Let me know about the graphs, and if you manage to stay to the end, today we are having vanilla ice cream. And I know that's going to be very weird for those of you that have not done it before, but if you're having a vanilla ice cream with me, you just need to put it in the comments underneath, and I'll love your comments. Thank you very much. This has been the tiniest one with another video for you out. Ding! Love you, sis.